And Adrian, this is a topic that you submitted to the topic list, and I just love it because you mentioned the Cookie Monster, and so that's super exciting to me because the Cookie Monster is my favorite Sesame Street character.
C
He's
is for
always the
cookie
coolest.
is good
Sing
enough
it, Rick.
for me.
Oh gosh, that's getting clipped into the opener right there. Hello and welcome to the CyberY Pod, where security, technology, and business meet. TCW is your go-to auditory and visual feast summarizing the captivating world of cybersecurity. On the pod, we bring you a monthly roundtable where humor meets hacker culture. We delve into the latest in cybersecurity news, trends, and mishaps, offering up a unique flavor of commentary for your consumption. Whether you're a seasoned InfoSec professional, a budding hacker, or just a tech enthusiast hungry for knowledge, strap in for a ride through the cyber wilderness. Where else can you find cutting-edge cyber insights served with a heaping helping of irreverence and humor? Only here, only now. Welcome to the CyberY Podcast. Joining me today at the CyberY Studios are three of my absolutely beautiful partners in crime. First, let me welcome to this month's show my main man, co-host, the great Rick Holland. Rick is as good as they come at understanding the motivations and tactics of nation-states, cyber criminals, and threat hunters. Here's some new ones for you, Rick. Are you ready? You are the sizzler of sirloin, the bearer of burnt ends, the regent of Wagyu, and I can't leave it out, the best girl dad outside of yours truly. Please, everyone say hello to Rick Holland. Hi, Rick.
Howdy, everybody.
Next, let me introduce the CyberWise resident tech wizard. He understands and deep dives all things bits, bytes, and blinking lights. He makes sure the TCW team goes as deep as we do wide. Here's some new ones for you, Adrian. He is the ump in Grumpy Old Man, the 2020 reincarnation of Vidal Sassoon, and the Jason to my Momoa. Let's welcome Adrian Sanabria to the show. Welcome, Adrian.
You say samosa? I'm hungry.
I said samosas. Let's have mimosas and samosas. It sounds like a good Sunday afternoon to me. All right, last but not least, we have Katie Teitler-Santullo, the CyberWise strategic savant. She navigates the complex web of cybersecurity vendor marketing policies and practices and human impacts. Only outpaced by Adrian. Katie's hair is the 2020s version of Nicole Kidman. She's the brains behind the CyberY brawn, if we have any brawn. And of course, she's the most well-spoken of the bunch. Clearly, I'm not. Please welcome our ray of sunshine in an otherwise dark studio, Katie.
Good afternoon.
Katie is the
finally.
brawn. What are you talking about?
She's the brains and the brawn. Let's be real. And finally, last but certainly least, I'm the host with the most, the driver of this bus full of freaks and weirdos, and the founder of the CyberY, Tyler Shields. With that, let's get on with today's show. Before we jump into the material today, I need to do our sponsorship pre-read. We have Material Security. Thank you so much for being the official sponsor of the CyberY Pod. Secure your productivity suite with Material Security. Microsoft 365 and Google aren't just applications. They are your critical infrastructure. These environments are home to all of your people, content, and comms. Secure these tools today. It requires a heavy set of disjointed tasks that leave blind spots and coverage gaps. Material Security is the only solution purpose-built to address risk across the whole environment with the focus and depth required to make a difference. Material integrates in minutes via Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace APIs with zero downtime. Customers get a single tenant, isolated instance, and complete control over the underlying infrastructure. Material works with organizations of all shapes and sizes. Learn more about their advanced security for your cloud productivity suite at material.security. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. Shout out to the Material Security team. All right, let's get on with the content for today. Before we go into the meat of the content, I want to have a little fun with the team here for a couple minutes. Everybody always comments on Big Head Tyler back here, right? Because I call it my ego, my alternative, my better half, et cetera, et cetera. And because of the commentary that I've gotten, I actually went ahead and brought a few co-hosts to the show. I'd like to introduce you to our next wave of co-hosts.
Oh, no.
First, we have Big Head Rick.
Oh my God.
Say hello to Big Head Rick. Big Head Rick is a bit snarky. He's got the very kind of squared off face, but he's a fantastic human being. So we got Big Head Rick on the show today.
Oh, no.
Oh my God. I had no idea this was happening.
Next we have Big Head Katie.
Oh God.
Okay? And Big Head Katie, she is so cool. She's a fantastic human being. Look at the hair.
How did you get that?
It's beautiful.
Facial
it's so beautiful.
That's awful.
Okay. So Big Head Katie.
Oh boy.
I don't know. I don't know where to go with that. We're going to let that one go.
We should burn that one for sure.
and last but not least, and this one's hard actually. It's difficult to put on a stand because his hair is like incredible.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, our resident Grumpmeister, Big Head Adrian.
Look like that, what is that fish with the nose that hangs over its mouth? the blobfish.
So I recommend for all of our audience members that are on Spotify or Google or whatever your podcast catcher is, catch the video version of this on YouTube. No, you cannot miss.
Or I would say
post today.
I would say you can. I would definitely 100% offer that you can.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So we have each of the big heads will be shipped to you guys to have in your studio, in the background of your own studio,
or
so
not.
You can use. So that you can use the big heads at your leisure. So welcome to our new co-hosts, the big head versions of ourselves. And with that, let's get into the meat of this week. Story number one this week. It's incredible. We've been talking about this. Actually, it happened or this month, not this week, but story number one. It happened earlier in the month. It's a few weeks old, but I've got it titled Laceworks Fall from Grace.
Yeah.
And, I think it's a bit of a clickbaity title calling it that because, it's Laceworks isn't the only one that has fallen in valuation. But in particular, this month, we've seen a massive consolidation when it comes or massive crush that's coming on the back of the consolidation for valuations of cybersecurity unicorns. There's a bit of a consolidation in the cloud security space. This deal really highlights a trend of pulling multiple disparate products together. But from a metrics perspective for the audience, this is a bit of a fire sale for Lacework. It was once valued at $8.3 billion. And Lacework is now being sold for a fraction of that price. I believe the final price was $200 to $300 million. Adrian may know the exact number off the top of his head. But the real question in that range, $8.3 billion down to $200 million, is what's going on here in cybersecurity valuations? Do we see this trend continuing? What does this deal signal for overall cyber unicorns? And in particular, I'm going to dig into a few of the different subsections of consolidation in the market. So let me kick this one to Adrian. What are your thoughts on the overall consolidation that's occurring in the market, the downward pressure on prices of valuations of cybersecurity startups? And will this end anytime soon? Do we see an uptick coming back?
Yeah, so this consolidation is inevitable in any category, especially a hot category. Like I remember we saw it in CASB in like 3.5 years, like from companies coming out of stealth to over 50% of the market being gobbled up, happened real quick with the CASBs. And so it was inevitable that it would happen here. And this kind of reminds me a bit of what happened with FireEye, where they just had fire sales and marketing, but the product didn't live up to expectations. So they had a ton of churn. And so there's this kind of delay that happens before you actually see the impact of that churn. And because the sales and marketing is so good, like a sauce covering up bad chicken, you can get away with it for a little while. But eventually you kind of run out of, you exhaust a lead, funnel, or the folks that aren't aware that other customers are kind of running away from the product. So I don't know if it's a bad product. These are just things I've heard anecdotally, is that, a lot of people weren't happy with the product, and, renewals were rare, if any at all.
So question on this though, Adrian, then given that description, which I love, is this a function of just the general crush that is coming with valuations, post-ZIRP era, post-free money, no inability to grow at the expected rate that the investors originally had when they put money into this thing at $8 billion? Or is this a situation of, and maybe it's a combination platter of both, is this a situation of churn crushing the company on the back of a product that never got to product market fit? Or is it both?
No, I don't think from what I know, it's not as much of a market fit problem. It's a good product problem. It just emphasizes how important it is to have a good product if you're in a really competitive market like the
Mm.
CSPM market is. And this is a product like this isn't next gen AV. Like it's a pretty easy product to build. So a bunch of people built it. We saw dozens and dozens of people in the CSPM market. And then as it began to expand and you had cloud workload security and other pieces all getting folded into CNAP, this larger category. There was just a bunch of stuff hastily thrown together to try and keep up. And yeah, if you don't have a great product and the market's saturated, this is going to happen to somebody.
Yeah. So speaking of market saturation, super producer Sean will bring up a clip here. I don't even know if we're allowed to use this. So Forrester, send me an email if we got to clip this out later post release. But here's the picture of the Forrester Wave cloud workload security from Q1 2024. What really stands out to me here is that Lacework, look, they're buying a market laggard, right? The market presence is low. It's a weaker strategy or a mid-level strategy that Laceworks is deploying with a mid-level product offering, according to Forrester, right? And we can debate the merits of any individual analyst group's ratings of a product or company or market, but there were so many better options. So originally, when I saw this acquisition by Wiz, I immediately was like, "Hey, super smart acquisition." Taking somebody off the plate. It's a reminiscent of they want to run with Palo Alto, but the difference is Palo Alto. When you looked at their acquisitions over the past 10 to 15 years, they always picked a leader. They never picked a laggard. And so it's going to, I think, be interesting as we follow this one to determine whether this acquisition ends up being a smart acquisition or if it ends up being even a waste of $200 to $300 million, even at severe discounts.
Yeah, so I recall hearing something about maybe Lacework. There was a gap, that Wiz needed to fill, and Lacework had a product that filled that gap. But yeah, in their customer portfolio, the remaining customer portfolios were something, right?
It is, and I don't know if Sean will bring this up or not, but I've got a really cool picture of a haircut here. We can flash that on the screen.
It's a big haircut.
It is a fantastic haircut, both in my animated GIF as well as the actual haircut that Laceworks took here to get acquired. So, it's an interesting fall from grace. Oops, look at that, man! I always end up whacking my camera or my microphone, but it's an interesting fall from grace. I think other companies are likely to feel a similar crush. I just don't know that they're going to be quite as severe.
Oh,
As
the first one we saw was Cybereason, right? Like that was a pretty shocking one. It went from a valuation of like 2.3 billion to 250 million.
Yes, that was a massive one. And Cybereason was publicly traded. Were they publicly traded too? Or were they private? They might have been private.
So.
You're right.
No, I think they were still private. But again, kind of similar market where I heard the product had some issues and very crowded market. It's how do you sell Cybereason over CrowdStrike or SentinelOne at this point?
Yeah, there's a law in business that all markets go to three players, right? And
Yeah.
I've mentioned this before on different pods. All markets go to three players: a 60% market share, 30% market share, and then a 10% market share. And some will say 60, 20, 10, whatever the math is. But then anybody that's remaining is basically boxed out of the market.
Microsoft,
And
CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, right?
there it is. There it is, right? And so maybe something similar is happening to the CNAP space where it's like, hey, we've got winners. And now that winners have been determined, everybody else just gets acquired or fades out to non-existence.
Yeah.
So any additional color, Rick or Kay, do you want to add to this topic before we jump to topic number 2?
I think it does highlight, I don't know, the lack of due diligence people were doing or just the YOLO funding that was out there. Like you have to do due diligence when you're doing this. I don't have any direct experience with Lacework, but I've never come across someone in the wild, and I'm talking to CISOs, multiple security teams a week in my role as a field CISO. So I don't know, but yeah, it definitely, there's going to be other versions of this, but probably not. Well, certainly not with the crazy valuation that we had seen at their level.
Yeah.
And I also agree that the market dynamics right now, the IPO market is starting to come back very, very slightly. and everything that's been happening over the last year or so, including the extension rounds and down rounds. Those are very PC terms for companies struggling to keep their valuations where they are. But when the rubber hits the road, you're definitely going to see companies whose valuations aren't where they are. They might be taking on additional money as a quote extension. But the reality is, if they're getting bought, if they're going IPO, it's not the company who's going to be negotiating with individual investors with whom they've had a long-standing relationship. It's going to be something very, very different. And I think they're definitely putting the squeeze on companies because everybody sees it coming. And when you're buying something, and that goes for IPOs too, everybody wants the best price.
I know Tyler likes a good card game reference, but yeah, to your point, Katie, I think everybody's going to have to start showing their hands at this point.
I do like that reference. Yes, it's definitely my sweet spot. I also think that maybe we should put this on a docket for another pod about who takes the real risk in these overinvested companies, and I think we can dive into that on a later pod. But to spoiler alert everybody, it's the individual contributor employees that take the biggest risks actually on these moves. So we can dive into that on a later show. I'll tease that one out. But I'm going to move to topic number 2 for the day. And Adrian, this is a topic that you submitted to the topic list. And I just love it because you mentioned the Cookie Monster. And so that's super exciting to me because the Cookie Monster is my favorite Sesame Street character.
C is for cookie is
Sing
good
it,
enough
Rick.
for me.
Oh gosh, that's getting clipped into the opener right there. Rick singing C is for cookie. But Adrian, give us a little bit of information on Chrome to fight cookie theft. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so I did have to do some research into this because I wasn't sure, because Google's done a lot with cookies, and as Tyler you point out, I have a note in here. Only Cookie Monsters had more struggles with cookies than Google.
He never could get it in his mouth. Like he always just missed every time.
He was trying so hard. He was
not very efficient.
Yeah, he's just not efficient. All right, go ahead, Adrian.
So folks might remember a couple of years ago, I think starting in January 2021, Google announced they were going to try and replace traditional cookies. And a lot of this had to do with privacy. Yeah, they called it flock federal learning of cohorts, which is a terrible. I can see why they called it flock, like the acronym's terrible. But the idea is instead of advertisers getting all the information about you, they only get the pertinent information. You know, they don't get individual information. They get groups of people who are, interested in a particular topic. And then they exactly a year later, they killed it off and had a new proposal called Topics, which there's a GitHub still out there about it. It's not very active, but it's not dead either. But what we're talking about today is something that's a little bit different, and it has to do with cookie theft. So, I'm probably going to throw to Rick here first because he knows a lot about the malware and cybercrime infrastructure and things like that. But there's a category of malware called info stealers that will, once they get on your box, they will grab all your credentials and things that are available. And because of how desktop PCs, both Macs and PC alike, Windows and Mac OS, you can just scoop up those cookies. You get those OAuth keys. Suddenly you're logged into Slack as someone. You're logged into Gmail as someone. You don't have to go through authentication. You get to skip multi-factor authentication, 2FA, all that stuff that's supposed to protect you if you get access to those browser cookies.
So fundamentally, as an old OG pen tester guy, I always have been taught since day one, 25 years ago, that if it's client side, it can be bypassed. So if we're talking about tying things to the machine, can't I, assuming an infinite level of resources in an arms race model, right? Can't I figure out how to spoof everything regardless, period, full stop?
If you're present on the box, yeah, maybe you can get what you need without having to move the cookies off. Is that what you're suggesting?
Oh, I see. Well, yeah. So I guess you'd have to be able to collect hundreds of individual data points off that potential target machine to be able to duplicate what that back end looks like.
I mean, if you're on my box and I'm logged into Salesforce, you could just use the Salesforce API to just grab everything off Salesforce and then exfiltrate it off my machine. And you don't have to steal the cookie, right? Yeah. So there's still other
if you own the box,
perspectives.
you got big problems, right?
Well, the other problem is, one of the downsides I note in the notes here is that if you have user level access, not even root or admin level access on the box, you have signing capabilities as DBSC here. So you can create new keys. So I'm not sure. I mean, this will stop current malware, but I mean, they'll just have to adjust how they do it a little bit. So I'm not sure how much it really buys us.
And does it actually? Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
I was very excited about this one, and redirect me as you will, Tyler, because I mean, this is a very common initial access technique. Also, when people are able to, other problems that we have is when people are able to connect to, work resources from a personal device, that sort of thing. But there's entire markets that are designed for these info stealers. And as Adrian said, they impact both Windows and Mac OS. So again, in our circles, we know Mac OS is not safe, but you still see people talking about Mac OS as kind of a silver bullet. There was one called Dnsys market that was taken down a couple years ago. Russia market is still very active, but the actors go out, steal all these cookies, and then they bundle them up. And Russia market, as an example, is actually got a very clean user interface on it. You can actually go after regions, you can go after companies, but they'll basically bundle them up by company and then sell them out. So you can slice and dice them however you want. And I would also imagine by the time they make it to some of those markets, those are the more opportunistic ones where they're just, hey, we're going to steal as much that we can because we just got it off Rick's personal device, whatever the case. But then there's the targeted attack component of this as well, and that's the kind of stuff that doesn't make it up into the to the dark web markets where they're selling this sort of stuff. So this is a big problem. It's a big opportunity for initial access brokers. Anything we can do to put more friction for the adversaries, because it will be a cat and mouse game. It always is. But I think we can at least have a look. Hopefully, I'll have to see how it gets implemented and rolled out. Stem the bleeding a little bit, perhaps.
So if I can put on my bad guy hat for a moment, Tyler, I'm thinking like initially, if it's not only Chrome that does this, if this does go out to other browsers, because that's going to be one of the issues here. Chrome is not. It's the I think still the biggest. The most used browser out there, but certainly not the only one. We would need all browsers to do this. Otherwise, info stealers would just target non-Chrome browsers, right? But putting on my bad guy hat, the other side of this, if you have access to my, say, OpenAI account, you can generate an API key. So even though my OAuth, that I'm logged into OpenAI with would be locked to my device, that API key would not be. And a lot of applications these days have the ability to generate API keys, and those are intentionally very portable because you might be generating that API key for Zapier or, for some other third-party service, for some SOAR service or something like that. Those have to be portable. Those cannot be bound to a device. So those things are still going to be very valuable to steal.
So I have a technical question for you, Adrian, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but is it on the client side, all of this stuff is mashed and hashed and a single unit is then provided? The reason why I ask that is, isn't there also privacy implications and overlays of collecting all of this data off a device to lock it down? And now you have all this broad set of data that has to be sent back to the server side, or is it all hashed and mashed client side before being sent up?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Like in Chrome, how do you grab it out of Chrome?
So in Chrome, and again, maybe I'm just misunderstanding the entire story, which could very well be true because I'm an idiot. But
they're individual text files. But
okay.
you can. So there's a single command like in JavaScript, you can just chrome.cookies.getAll works,
and it gets all of the cookies, it gets all the individual cookies, but all of the hashed and mashed up components that identify the hardware as well and the device as well into a single unit like that. That's my question. Are there privacy implications here with the collection of this broader set of data and using it to create a token?
Well, I mean, Rick might know more about what they actually grab, but if they're grabbing this as malware with user level privileges on the box, sure, they can grab all that too.
Interesting.
Because they might need that to tie, because when you go to sell it on the market, you want a lot of that contextual data. You want to say, hey, this is the chief marketing officer at Uber, right? This is his credentials. Then you can sell it for more, right? If you have that contextual data that tells you how much that's worth.
Yeah, so I guess I'm getting a little bit worried about that is the privacy roll-up implications of this okay, we know for a fact it's the CISO of Uber or the CISO of Lyft or whoever, it's their box, their device. Now there's privacy implications as to
because they're logged in as LinkedIn as that person.
Yeah. Right? So Rick, go ahead. I interrupted you there.
I was just going to give some of the features of some generalized features of the stealers, not what Google or big tech might do with it, but things like obviously browser credentials, file grabbing, keychain database extraction, copying clipboard data, desktop wallet support, web wallets, screenshots. Some of these even have web admin panels to go back to the boxes as well. So those are and also
so they function as rats also.
Yeah, they've kind of grown over time to have other capability in them. And by the way, the ones I'm reading off right now are just some of the Mac OS ones, common ones like Atomic Stealer, Mac Stealer, that sort of stuff. So yeah, they are kind of become Swiss Army knives in a way to do, like a lot of these tools do, right? You have other purposes that they grow into.
And to give more context, we've seen a number of breaches happen because of this. I think LastPass, one of their big breaches.
The developer.
Circle CI, also an engineer at Circle CI. At one of these cases, somebody downloaded OBS, and it was one of those fake versions of OBS that Google AdWords was sponsoring and throwing up in their links before people said, "Hey, Google, take this malware that you're serving up at the very top of OBS search results down." And then Lapsus used it a lot, so the whole EA Electronic Arts hack that resulted in GTA 6 stuff getting leaked, code and videos and stuff like that. I think that was also, they got into their Slack using a stolen Slack OAuth key and then social engineered their way into EA proper from there.
So I'm going to use that to dovetail to the next article. Because I feel like these things are interconnected and intertwined. And this is an article on, is it SiSense? Is that how you pronounce it, Rick?
That's how I pronounce it. Although I've never been a customer of them. I've used their competitors in the past, so I've never heard how they say it. But SiSense is how I say it.
Got it.
Correct us if we're wrong.
Yeah. SiSense, send us a message. Feel free to sponsor us, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, they won't even do PR, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I don't think they're going to respond to us if they won't respond to Brian Krebs. So,
yeah, our little tens of viewers show here. So in my notes here, I've got some of the key details of the SiSense breach. We've got a topic here to discuss the SiSense breach redux. The latest security story around SiSense is that they were hit by a data compromise. But here's a few little details on the breach, and then we'll have Rick dive us into the actual specifics. So at this point, according to the articles I've read, and maybe Rick knows more, the exact nature of the breach and the data affected is not yet completely known. CISA urged SiSense customers to reset their passwords on any credentials used to access SiSense services. And reports are suggesting that millions of credentials may have been infected. I read today that this breach could have legitimately compromised every person in America. Now, that again could have been a clickbaity article that I fell for. However, the article basically said that there is enough data inside of SiSense, that it could affect nearly every single human being in America. So obviously law enforcement is involved in the situation and the investigation, and SiSense has not released any or many details, but has said that the issue is legit and is working with experts to address it. So Rick, can you give us a little bit of detail about what is SiSense, what happened on the breach at whatever level you can go to, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, SiSense is a business analytics platform. If you've used Tableau in the past or Power BI, two tools that I've used in different parts of my career, but really Actually, a good example on those tools is they try to, I don't know, democratize data analytics, right? They will connect into whatever your data stores for whatever your applications are, and then they try to give you trending. But basically, it's your business analytics platform, and you're trying to help, the layman, the layperson, be able to derive, are we trending up, trending down, that sort of stuff. So it plugs into tons of applications. So for me, there's huge third-party risk applications here, because you could have literally any kind of data set plugged in, and then you're visualizing it and getting the trending out of it. SiSense is interesting. They have about 1,000 customers. If you just go onto their website, you'll see Verizon, PagerDuty, Philips Healthcare are a couple ones that are out there. I'd like to come back to PagerDuty in a little bit, but basically, I think Brian Krebs scooped this on April 10th. He got the email from the CISO of SiSense to customers. It's not clear if it's all customers or impacted customers. And then the CISO alert came out on the next day. And also it was joint. So the NCSC, which you could call the UK version of CISA, was also alerting folks onto this. But Krebs actually did a follow-up article that had a lot of detail and gives us a little insight. And I think you're right, Tyler. Our previous conversation could kind of tie into the initial access component here. But basically what they said was that SiSense, or what Krebs wrote from two sources inside the company or connected to it, they had their own self-hosted GitLab repo. And in that repo, the bad guys were able to get access to a token or a credential, we don't know which, and then get access to SiSense Amazon S3 buckets that had all of this data that was stored there. And basically that could have been millions of access tokens, email accounts, SSL certificates. SiSense had some conversations with Krebs, but then declined to comment in the story. And there's a couple other things that I've dug up, but let me just pause there because I'm sure you got some questions.
So I have one, and then I'll kick it to the rest of the team. I think that's what they were getting at with that clickbaity article, is that if we're talking about large-scale token components that might be stored inside of this thing, couldn't it be used to leverage down chain attacks and down chain system breaches for secondary companies left and right?
Oh, I think the third-party risk stuff is pretty significant, because anything that you're plugged into, Salesforce, Azure Blobs, other S3 buckets, RDS, GitHub, Google Box, like it could be your soup du jour of SaaS applications that you're feeding into it. I just don't know how much of that is going to contain like the PII. When I think every American, I think of the PII angle, because if now people don't always do that. CISO Rick is going to be doing some kind of analytics, and I'm going to have PII on it or PHI. I want to tokenize it. I want to eliminate it. I don't want to feed that in. But you can't assume that everybody would do that, before they're doing their analytics on it.
Understood. Katie, Adrian, do you have any questions or comments here?
I was just going to ask, I do think there's some clickbaity stuff here, and I don't think, and this is somewhat off topic, I don't think it makes sense for any announcement, any ensuing regulations or rules or whatever to be based on something like every American was impacted. Because honestly, if you tell me there was a breach and somehow my email address was in there, that's a very different story, right? And we've got sensationalism that's now moving over to, government announcements. And I think, like I said, this is a little off topic, but I don't think it helps in any way, aside from any of the technical components that go along with it. I think the sensationalism, I'd love to see it, tamped down a little bit, because when it comes to something that could be as broad-based as it seems to be, we have to understand what's really at risk here and how do we deal with it.
Let me ask you a question on that before I double back to Adrian and his community comment, because I want to go there as well. Katie, what if this was the UHG, Universal Healthcare Group? Is it as clickbaity if we attach it to that storyline?
Yeah, because the United Health breach was really, really broad-based, but at the same time, stop it. Stop it. That's the worst ever. Oh my God. Because yes, while individuals were impacted, a lot of individuals were impacted, not everybody felt it in their daily lives. And we have to somehow temper how we're rolling out messaging to them. Because even if I were part of United Health, there's a chance that I wouldn't be affected whatsoever. Now, if I'm affected, it's a big deal. If I'm having to, front 15 grand for a procedure that should be covered by insurance that's now not covered because of their quagmire, you bet that's going to set the house on fire. But we have to be more pragmatic about how we're talking about these things, and especially when it comes to a government agency, because for some reason people follow the lead, the tone from the top kind of thing. And in this case, we've got government agencies going, holy cannoli, this is the worst thing ever. And it's like, okay, let's look at this. Everything needs to be looked at from a risk point of view. And again, I would think it was the worst thing if I had some procedure, or somebody in my family had some procedure with the United Health thing and couldn't cover it. But I think one of the things that keeps popping out to me is it's bad, but let's not cry fire in the marketplace quite yet.
Adrian, hit me on what you saw in the community page that you loaded up.
Yeah. So I mean, this is classic how not to handle a breach.
100%.
So this is
100%.
My classic breach soapbox. Hey, anybody can get breached. Like that shouldn't be your primary concern. How you handle it is 100%. What really reveals the companies who know, who are good at security, who are not. Because there's no transparency here. There's no message on the main website. In fact, I was able to find only 2 threads mentioning the breach. One had no replies to it. The other has a ton of replies to it. It looks like the main place where customers are both outing themselves as customers affected by the breach, and desperately trying to get more information. So for days and days here, people are asking, does this affect self-hosted? Because like Tableau, it looks like there's both an application that you can download or something where you can do it on-prem and cloud version of their product. And customers don't know what's going on. They're having to beg for information. There's an email address that SiSense is directing everyone to. People aren't getting responses. There's references to a FAQ that's not published anywhere. So I imagine they're only replying to email addresses with the FAQ. Wow. So it's a bad look. You don't want customers. Like I remember when Sony Pictures, when that breach happened, journalists had some of the data that North Korea leaked. And Sony employees were reaching out to journalists because they wanted to know if their information was leaked in that breach. And Sony was not responding to employees internally. They were completely silent to both the outside and inside for at least the first week, maybe 2 weeks of that breach.
So what I'm hearing is that we should be having the Cyber Y class on how to handle a breach, but we'll set that aside as a future piece of content. Rick, go ahead.
I had a couple other things. There's another thread in the forums, and this one really kind of annoys me. Someone's asking about 2-factor authentication and wanting 2-factor authentication to be rolled out. And basically what they said is they have no plans to do it because the majority of their customers use an SSO provider. And this is one thing that gets my blood boiling because this is the enterprise tax here. So many small businesses, medium-sized businesses still don't have SSO providers, and they're relying on kind of local multi-factor authentication, 2-factor authentication. And basically what they said is our resources are currently focused on other projects that will impact greater portions of our users. So they're basically carving out their user subset and saying, for some of y'all, you don't have ping, you don't have Okta, whatever, we're not even focused on it. So that one, like, I'm amped up even talking about it because I really get frustrated.
And even fact, is not hard to add.
No,
I've seen projects with 2 developers add 2FA.
That's the case of the have and the have-nots. It's like, we think these people are more important, and great approach to cybersecurity. Awesome.
Yeah, to quote our friend Wendy in the security poverty line, if you're below the security poverty line and you can't have an SSO provider, well, you're kind of screwed. If I was still doing Forrester Waves, I would be dinging the hell out of vendors that made you pay more for single sign-on and it wasn't built in. Like, you shouldn't have that tax there. And
we've seen
logs. Actually, logs. I was about to say Microsoft. Yeah.
Now you're going back a month. You're digging up a scar from a month ago, Adrian.
Oh no, it's on the list.
It's on this.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It's on this month's show list. So real quick, we've discussed a
Foreshadowing.
little bit about foreshadowing. We discussed a little bit about the role of regulatory bodies here, how to handle it. We discussed generalized how to handle response. Rick, I want to know, in your honest opinion, what do you think the long-term ramifications of this breach are? Right, the breach really highlights a growing importance in data security and putting things into and trusting a SaaS service. Will this incident affect how enterprises trust SaaS services? Will they look for, hey, we're going to have our own isolated on-prem version only going forward because we don't trust any SaaS companies for this massive amount of data analytics or data consumption? And then the follow-on question to that, is there any downstream effects when it comes to AI and the broader solution of kind of data analysis at a broad base, in your opinion?
This kind of stuff is bottom of the page news, behind the fold type of thing.
I agree. Yeah.
And if you think about, and I just think about the organizations that I've worked in that have had these types of solutions. I mean, it's like the DNA. It's like your dashboard for running your business. So it's not easy to rip and replace. So, yeah, I'm not.
Does it just get buried? Does it just get buried then? People are like, well, it happened. Our shit got compromised. It is what it is. We'll just keep running our business.
I mean, I do think it's the business might outweigh security, but I do think having an inventory of your SaaS providers, managing your API keys, to Adrian's point, from before, periodic, just like you do access reviews for identities, you need to be doing access reviews for non-human identities that have ability to connect into different things. So I think you can control what you control as a security leader. Your business is probably not going to move away from these applications. Very likely to be the case. Now, maybe when you have a renewal coming up, I would pressure the vendor on this. Maybe you start to look at it, but to move for a business to move off a solution like this is probably a year plus type of journey just to inventory to be able to bring something else out. So I think it's here to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how sticky this product is in terms of having to learn the product, but from using Tableau, I'd say it's probably at least moderately sticky. Especially if your people are building it into products and portals and things like that. This looks like something that could be integrated into reporting and things like that. It looks like it'd be pretty hard to replace. And I think Microsoft, which we're going to talk about later, is kind of the exception here. I think most breaches like this, they're going to try their best to sweep it under the rug. Maybe they lose one or two customers, but it's a blip for them. It's not going to be a huge deal in the long term, unless it keeps happening. That's the only difference that I see. If it's disruptive enough, over and over and over, customers will they'll leave, and we've seen that happen.
Gotcha. Understood. All right, we're going to shift to our next topic, our next story. I actually bundled a couple of stories into the next one together. I want to open this conversation with a interesting story that happened to me in the last week. So in the last week or two, I don't remember the exact date, we have a story from npr.org that is referenced here in our show notes. The United States effectively banned non-compete agreements as saying they're not effective. They're not going to be allowed. They're going to be banned within the United States. Unenforceable is the word I'm looking for. There's good and bad that comes from that. But interestingly enough, I have a unique vantage point being a cybersecurity executive and marketer who runs businesses, as well as currently an individual contributor who doesn't run the business, but actually operates as an individual contributor. So I'm welcome in both of those societies, right? So, and by that, I mean, I'm connected to Slack groups.
Wait a minute. Where are you actually welcomed?
I'm welcome nowhere, but I'm lurking in those societies.
Okay, got it.
So I was able to see the response from individual contributor groups in Slack, like groups of people working, in sales orgs or working in marketing orgs, engineering orgs, entrepreneurial startup, individual contributor level folks. Simultaneously, I'm in groups that is like the executives of large businesses, entrepreneurs, people running the business. And there was a stark contrast in the responses. From the founders of the business, they were very worried about losing their IP, losing their ability to enforce executive transfer from one company to a competitive company, taking ideas, thoughts, direction with them, because you can't effectively limit that as a founder. How do you limit someone learning something in your business and then going to a competitor and applying it, right? Like that's impossible to stop. And then on the other side of that coin, the individual contributors were immediately going, this is the most amazing thing since sliced bread. I can now move to my competition. Nobody can stop me. All those reasons why unemployment or being employed can be limited are no longer valid. And the one interesting thing that I thought of there, or I heard there, was people saying, yeah, well, they're not, non-competes are not enforceable in my state, insert state here, Texas, California, whatever. Yeah, but at the end of the day, they are enforceable, because if you go to join a new company and you've signed a non-compete, whether it's enforceable in your state or not, all it takes is a threat of a lawsuit and your hiring company will just walk away from you cold turkey, because there's other people that they can pick up without the risk, right? And so I think there's some validity on both sides of this argument, and I'd love to open it up and maybe hear from a little bit from either Kadrian, that's the combo platter of Katie and Adrian. I'd like to hear from Kadrian.
Hold both faces up.
Yes, exactly. Both faces on that one. I'd like to hear from Katie and Adrian, their thoughts on this. Katie, let's start with you. Where's your head at with regard to the U.S. banning non-competes? Is this positive? Is it good for innovation? Is it good for business? Is it good for the talent pool?
I will go back to my comments from the previous segment, which is it's all about risk. Do I think this will help innovation? Maybe, maybe not. Time will tell, and it depends what we're talking about, which kind of data is getting transferred. I will say I am in a state where non-competes are essentially unenforceable. If somebody came after me for IP theft, in air quotes, go prove it, right? You have to know who you are, you have to know who you're working for, and you have to feel comfortable with your decisions. But as it pertains to this particular ruling, I think people talk, people have networks, things will get around. So are you saying that you're going to not have this issue? You're not going to have an issue of data transfer if people leave your company and non-competes are in place? Absolutely not. Because in a lot of states, non-competes are in place and the information gets out anyway. You have a lot of people jumping from company to company because of the hiring situation. And of course, they're bringing their knowledge, their background, their skills. And that's, I guess you could look at it as a form of IP theft.
So is it better? Is it better for the individual, or is it better for the company, this ban?
I think it's both. Honestly, I think it's both. I can see if I'm hiring somebody and, their former employer comes to me and says, we're going to sue the crap out of this person. I'd be like, of course that would scare me. But I think it's good when we have people working and bringing in outside ideas anyway. I know I'm ignoring a whole piece, and maybe Adrian has the 180 degree view on this from me. I don't know.
Yeah, I've got some hot takes. So we've seen a couple cases and we've talked about them in the past where like entire talent pools have been sniped from companies, and I think that's what this kind of thing is the real intent for something like this. But it does get abused a lot. Like I've seen a lot of individuals just kind of tortured over, like this non-compete makes it seem like I can't even work in this industry after I leave this company, and which is definitely unfair, particularly if you lay off a person and at the same time they're, your employment contract with them says they can't go get work after you fire them, after you lay them off. Like it's ridiculous at that level. And, I'd argue we've seen some of the best innovation in cybersecurity specifically come out of individuals who are frustrated, who are individual contributors or somewhere in management. You look at Palo Alto, Nierzuk got frustrated at Juniper Networks after NetScreen. He was at NetScreen. They were acquired by Juniper Networks. And he was frustrated. He couldn't build stuff there. He had these great ideas he couldn't use. Went off and created Palo Alto, one of the, most highest valuation cybersecurity companies out there. Same thing happened with CrowdStrike and with Cylance, Stuart McClure and George Kurtz, Dmitry Alperovich. All these folks, like if they were really draconian non-competes there, we wouldn't have seen these companies get created.
Well,
but
we don't know that for sure. In this case, yes, it's a one-to-one straight, clear line, very visible line. But again, even if it's not somebody at that level, I don't believe that just because you work in one company and you have that knowledge, it's automatically going to start a competitor or a company that usurps all activity, all customer acquisition. Because a huge part of my life, and I know a huge part of all of your lives, is your network and security. It's honest to God, it's the number one important thing I do.
And to just emphasize this, what Katie's saying here, I think the biggest lie that founders and CEOs tell themselves is that their ideas have a lot of value. It's all about how you take that idea, you execute it. And I can't tell you how much frustration I've had working in marketing for startups. No, we don't want to put screenshots out there because somebody might copy what we're doing. Who cares? Like, they're going to figure it out. Like, what we're doing is not, something that somebody couldn't figure out on their own. If I like to assume people have already, whether or not we're seeing it in competitors' products yet or not. Like, eventually, like, you can't keep that from going out. Customers are going to use it. They might talk to the other vendor. It's not all the effort spent to keep ideas secret, I think is really wasted, and if anything, hurts the companies trying to do that.
So we talked quite a bit about trade secrets protection. We talked quite a bit about impact on innovation. I want to chuck to Rick. Do you think the ability for people to move without fear of to move from competitor to competitor, without fear of any kind of retaliation, will have any impact on wages, or will have any impact on tenure, people's tenure? What's your thoughts on that? Do you have an opinion there?
When it's the startup land, I don't know how much it impacts tenure, or it impacts tenure by cliffs. I think you're more likely to, I want to hit my 1 year cliff so that I get this equity that I could then make a decision to buy or not. Wages is an interesting one. Generally, I'm kind of pleased to hear this. I mean, there is a carve out for executives. At one point, executives were not going to be included in this. So I think it is important to note that senior leadership can still be non-competed, which would protect like your VP of product and things along those lines. I do agree 100% on the execution component. Like, you can have the greatest idea, somebody else can too, but whoever can execute, have the timing right in the market is going to be there. I'm not sure about the wages. That's a good question. I have to think a little bit more about that one.
So
also,
I'm going to follow it.
It could be a while, right? This is going to get litigated. We're excited. It doesn't go into effect for a while, so people are going to go against the government on this. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, there's the enforcement part of that storyline for sure. But I will tell you a story that I did hear from market about someone who's come up on market, and this particular person received much larger salaries from competitors in that space based on this particular thing having changed and been in play. So I think there will be some positive impact on. And positive, I mean, from the eyes of the individual contributor, not the company that has to pay the salary, but from the person being hired. I think there'll be some push up in wages that could occur because you're able to target talent and recruit talent from competitors directly.
That know the space, that know the customer base.
Correct. And if you are strong in your space and you've had a long career in a particular subsegment of cyber, you can demand a bigger number now than you could before. So I feel like we could talk literally a full 2-hour pod on this particular topic. So I'm going to go ahead and flush this one
at the end of it real quick. I had one more aspect.
Tie me up, Adrian.
I wanted to mention back when I used to do product reviews for Cyber Risk Alliance, one of the things I would point out in those product reviews was whether or not the EULA allowed you to talk about the product. So this is something that could, and I'm curious about this, if anybody knows if this also covers EULAs that say you can't review the product publicly or can't share test results of the product, because some companies have this in their EULA where they basically, like you can't go on YouTube or can't write a blog post, with screenshots and detailing your experiences with the product, which I think, again, only hurts the companies that put that kind of language in their stuff, because now you can't go anywhere to find out about the product.
All right, I just juggled the order for those of us on the team that we're tracking on my order system here. I juggled the order a little bit. I want to jump to. I think our audience really loves breach redux content. So I'm going to actually elevate, because I don't want to run out of time here. I'm going to elevate the CSRB report discussion from you, Adrian. You wrote in the CyberWhy a deep thought piece on April 16th entitled "A Meta-Review of the Summer 2023 Microsoft Exchange Online Intrusion." Yes, that Microsoft breach. These are my thoughts on the CSRB report. It got a lot of clicks. It got a lot of views. People seem to like this Redux. Can you give us the high-level review of what you wrote there, and maybe we can start to debate and discuss some of the topics around it?
Yeah. So this is it's very interesting because and I was very excited when the one of the White House executive orders, we've had a bunch now centered on cybersecurity or dealing with cybersecurity in some way. And one of them dictated the creation of a group that would investigate really big incidents in cybersecurity related incidents, and that's the CSRB, the Cyber Safety Review Board, I believe is what that stands for. And
Yep.
they've done 3 reports now. They did the Log4j vulnerability, they did Lapsus and related threat groups, and then this one, the one we're talking about today. So the short version of what happened here is that this was traced back to a Chinese hacking group, the same group that did the Aurora hack to Google that resulted in the whole Beyond Core philosophy coming about in some of their products. They've had Beyond Core branded products as well. And they wanted to know, what U.S. folks were planning or talking about when it comes to Chinese-U.S. relations. So they apparently the easiest way to do that was to hack all of Microsoft.
Take them all down.
Yeah, just, as you do, and they somehow found a key. We don't know how they found the key. Microsoft's logs only went back 30 days.
What? We still don't know? Spoiler alert.
Microsoft's own so they're still investigating it. They came up with something like 46 theories about how this could have happened, and they're not done.
That was actually a quick side note for me, because I think y'all know I'm a cyber threat intelligence background. Essentially, they're using some what we call structured analytic techniques to come up with all the scenarios and working through them. So as an Intel geek, that was something that kind of clued into me and anyone that's in the CTI space or traditional Intel analysis. They were doing Intel work there, which is kind of cool. Anyway, I geeked out on that a little bit. So carry on, Steve.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you what happened, how it happened, like the shortest version possible, and then just some highlights of this. So they got their hands on this signing key, and this signing key was able to create keys that would give you access to different organizations or individuals' accounts. So so first problem here, there was a bug in how Microsoft did access control, where you shouldn't have been able to create a key that would give you access to organization level Microsoft 365 and to like the Outlook.com, Hotmail, like individual email side of it. But it was that one signing key gave access. You guys are really distracting. You know that?
So for those of you that don't know, we're going to go ahead and pop up on the screen. I'm going to put it in here in our back channel. Rick posted a quote from an article about Microsoft doubling down on cybersecurity that was released on April 26, 2024. And in that article, it says, security underpins every layer of the tech stack, and it's our number one priority, Satya Nadella said on a conference call with analysts, and we are doubling down on this very important work, putting security above all else before all other features and investments. And so that made Rick and I laugh very hard. And we have a wonderful animated GIF that hopefully super producer Sean can go ahead and pop up that is just super funny. So when you see our video, you'll see all of
You
us
sure
kind of
about
tilting
that?
our head
You sure
sideways
Sure
and
about that?
saying, "Are you sure
You sure
about
about
that,
that?
Satya? Are
Yeah,
you sure about that?" With
All right,
the-
I'll
with the
stop.
little
I'll
head
stop distracting you now, Adrian. Sorry.
So back to Adrian. Hit us with the
I
rest
think
of
I think that GIF would
the summary.
be even better if it were a husky, if it were overlaid on a husky, like turning the head. You sure about that?
You sure about that? Yeah, exactly. That dog look. Really? Go ahead, Adrian. We're sorry for interrupting with our stupid shenanigans.
No, you're
no
not.
worries. But yeah, so so one of the first things, so I love the the folks they have on the cyber safety review board are the methodology of doing this assessment is great because they didn't just look at Microsoft, down, they didn't get tunnel vision and just interview them. They said, okay, here's how Microsoft is doing it. They've effectively got the skeleton key that gives you access to everybody's stuff. Let's go see how other people are doing it, for comparison's sake. And they went and talked to Google. They went and talked to Amazon. They went and talked to Oracle even. And he found even Oracle is doing a better job at segmenting customer data and limiting
What?
access to customer systems. Yeah, right?
You don't hear positive things about Oracle often, right?
It's not a great
Ever,
look.
ever.
So this key they were using should have been shut down long before they got access to it. This thing was generated in 2016. This attack happened in 2023. Like that's a signing key that lasted, what is that? 7 years, 7 or 8 years. And there are just so many items here where it was clear Microsoft knew better. They knew they shouldn't have done the thing that they ended up doing. They just made really bad decisions here. And
but security underpins every layer of the tech stack, Adrian.
Are you sure about that?
We know that they know this, and we know, and kind of to, so spoiler to go to the very end to one of my thoughts about this is I can't imagine that there aren't folks at Microsoft who knew better and were pushing for doing better on security. So I think this is almost great for Microsoft because those folks who really want to see Microsoft do better on some of this stuff now have something to point to. They now have a hall pass to go ahead and do stuff that they wanted to do a long time ago.
So Adrian, I have a question for you on this. I remember back to Trusted Computing Initiative by Microsoft. I think it was called back in the early 2000s, 20 years ago, 2 decades. Yeah. Wow, he
the
even
Bill
knows
Gates
the date.
memo.
Exactly. And before then, I was involved in a lot of pen test work against a lot of Microsoft products where we ripped them to shreds. We were constantly ripping them to shreds. And it came from a top-down memo from Gates himself to make this company a security-focused company, that we are not going to put out insecure garbage any longer. And they did. Yep. They drastically changed very quickly for a long period of time. It feels like they may have regressed in many ways in the new era. Is this something that if Satya is going to make these quotes where we're all making fun of them, we're back to 2001 again, right before the Bill Gates memo. So is this a scenario where Satya, hey, quit paying it lip service and actually make it happen within your business, or you're going to pay in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, that 2002 Trusted Computing memo, doesn't, it ran out of steam. The Azure, the people building Azure weren't around back then. These folks, there have been 2 CEO changes since Bill Gates wrote that. So yeah, you've got to keep, that momentum going. Like there should be a new Trusted Computing memo probably every 5 years. You probably have to, with security culture, like keep reminding people, hey, like we can't forget about this. We can't just stop doing this. And this is the effect. Like we've seen some companies we're talking about earlier, Lacework, Orca, and Wiz. Some of their best marketing is just beating up Microsoft and showing all the dumb bugs and mistakes that they've made in Azure.
Wiz did a ton of that. Wiz did a ton of that.
So when I wrote this up, a short one for the weekly Cyberwire, and that was one of the things I called out on this. I was getting annoyed by vendors that are direct competitors, EDR space and others, glass house throwing stones type of bit, because I think if everybody looked themselves in the mirror that's a cybersecurity vendor, you're not going to be as strong as you want, especially if you're earlier stage. You don't have as much money to spend on security. So that also triggers me when people from a competitive perspective are kind of being disingenuous with them targeting Microsoft. I'm not apologizing for Microsoft. I'm not, writing Microsoft, giving them a hall pass here. I just found it, somewhat triggering when vendors are throwing stones at them, knowing they're just trying to take Microsoft's share, share of security market.
Yeah. All right. So some other highlights here.
I would say it's always bad marketing if you're trying to point out somebody else's weaknesses, because somebody's eventually going to do it to you. So,
well, hold
you
on,
don't have something nice to say.
It sure worked well for Wiz, right? Every time they put out a massive AWS or Azure compromise at the cloud sec level, they get huge market recognition because that's what they secure, right? So is it a net negative for Wiz to be attacking Microsoft for their vulnerabilities? I would argue from a business sense, it's actually very positive. Now, more often than not, I tell companies don't do that because it can backfire, much to your point, Katie, right? Till stuff comes full circle on you. But hey, I think it's working great for Wiz's marketing.
And they're not just targeting Microsoft.
To be,
Microsoft has the worst ones.
Go ahead, Katie.
It has to be targeted and it has to be strategic. It can't just be, look how bad they are, we do better. In Wiz's case, they take the time and the effort and have the tech to go beyond, oh, this company is just bad. I don't even want to talk about Microsoft in particular. In Wiz's case, and I just keep getting hairs in my face. Sorry, guys. In Wiz's case, they've really invested in showing the reasons why this doesn't have to be so bad, hard, complicated, whatever the case may be. So that's different than just purely going after a competitor, because they're taking data. They're taking facts.
So they're providing it with meat. They're actually putting meat there.
And they're releasing value with it. Like they're giving practical recommendations. I mean, they did a piece on MITRE ATT&CK TTPs for cloud attacks that was wonderful. It wasn't gated and stuff along those lines. So I think there's ways that you can do it. But some of the things that I had seen is not necessarily what I would recommend for other companies.
Yes, it has to be very intentional, and you have to be able to back it up.
Got it. Adrian, wrap us up on this topic. Give us the final punchline here.
Yeah. So one of the most troubling things here, and we touched on it earlier, I went on my soapbox about how to handle a breach, and transparency is an important bit of that. And, I mentioned those 46, I think it was 46 theories they had. They pitched one of those theories as what actually happened. A lot of people remember that from reading their write-up. I forget how many months ago, 9 months ago, something like that. They said, there was a crash dump and that's where they got the key. And then we find out after this CSRB report comes out, nobody ever found any crash dump with a key in it. There's zero evidence. This was just a theory, except they didn't write it as a theory. So basically, Microsoft came out and lied and said, we found the source of the problem solved. And then we find out they're still investigating. They still have zero evidence. They don't know what happened. They don't know how China got in and got access to that key. They don't know even what individuals might have gotten hit to make that happen. So, that was a big problem. And so CSRB pointed that out to them, like, hey, you need to update your blog post 6 months ago. It took them, they waited way too long to update that, so that's a trust issue. That's, I think that's something that's going to haunt Microsoft for a while. We were talking about with SiSense, is this going to be a big impact to them? Nah, it's going to be a blip. They're going to go on. They're going to be fine. But with Microsoft, they get a lot more due diligence, a lot more scrutiny, especially by governments around the world. And I think this could hurt them a lot more longer term, the way they handle this.
Yeah, interesting to talk about too, the homogeneity that comes with Microsoft being such a massive platform that, trust is a big piece of their success, and having trust when you're that much of a massive provider for so many large scale enterprises, governments, nation states, et cetera. There's an inherent trust level that you just have to reach. So,
and there's so much we didn't get to talk about. So you should go read the article. The State Department did some really cool detection engineering. They're the ones who actually detected this attack not Microsoft. So you should go check out the full thing. There's a lot of information in there.
Yeah, Adrian, I apologize. I wish I could give you another half hour on this topic. Maybe we'll
It's a
even
whole
do a
podcast
dedicated
on
pod. I was going to say, maybe even we could do a dedicated pod on this topic one day. We have like 4 dedicated pods that we could spin out of today's show, but trying to keep it succinct and on track today. I want to take a minute and ask Katie. She did a bit of research on the more recent component of NVD, and I want to ask Katie, what are your thoughts about NVD, and in particular, the lack of enrichment that we're seeing, and in particular, even more specific, there's no word. We did a podcast, we mentioned NVD a month ago on our pod. I've heard nothing. Have you heard any improvements that come from what's happening in the NVD space? Or are they just still hitting a backlog of stuff and all these products are going, we'll figure it out later?
Yeah, basically. So this NVD stopped being updated February 18th. So yes, we talked about
it. So that's
it
the National Vulnerability Database, for those that didn't watch our show a month ago, where we talked about the fact that NVD was not being updated for how long? Many months?
It started February 18th.
Okay.
So NVD is the U.S. government repository. So it comes out, this is a sponsored, not sponsored in the sense of, money and whatever, like like we talked about our wonderful sponsor material at the beginning, but this is something that comes out of NIST. The NVD, again, National Vulnerability Database, is the place where vulnerabilities are logged, analyzed, and updated with lots of information. Super short version of that. So as of February 18th, the CVEs that are getting found and published are not being updated. And there are all kinds of reasons. They say why. But as of a couple of days ago, NIST they announced basically nothing. They made an announcement that says, hey, our repository information on software and hardware vulnerabilities, it's growing. And we're looking at how we're going to, address some of those, especially the more significant ones. But we're not quite at a place to be updating and enriching all the information about CVEs that we publish.
What's the trickle down? What's happening to enterprises because of this?
So that's the background. CVEs aren't getting updated. Well, now you've got a whole category of not a whole category, several categories of cybersecurity tools that enterprises pay a lot of money for to put in their tech stacks and identify CVEs. If CVEs are being identified, or if they're not being logged, cataloged, enriched, it's really hard to do anything about it. So we've got these tools, especially vulnerability management tools of all various ilks, that haven't really done anything. They have not necessarily done any compensating research. Now, there are individual groups who, when this was announced originally, said, hey, we're going to look at these CVEs and do our own work. It was almost like some people in the community jumped in to say, whoa, we need to do something about it. But we really haven't seen very much about it. And so these tools that rely on CVE as a source of data for enterprises who are their customers, they really haven't addressed this problem. And
it's not looking like it's going to get any better anytime soon.
It's not looking like it's going to get any better. And yes, I also saw that announcement, Adrian. Adrian just posted that from this particular April 25th announcement or unannouncement, we're looking into longer term solutions, including the establishment of a consortium of industry, government, and other stakeholder organizations that can collaborate on research to improve the NVD. That's great, but that doesn't happen overnight. And so we have these vulnerability tools that were sold and are being sold to help enterprises identify, quantify, prioritize, address their attack surface that are missing a big piece of it. Now, I've talked to some companies who are in this space. I've talked to some people who work for these companies, and they're like, oh, well, NVD, the CVEs, they aren't our sole source. No, I get it. But even if you pull out what is long believed to be the major source, the leading source of vulnerability information for software and hardware, if you pull out that huge piece and there's nothing else to put in there, then you're still missing that piece. You can't make it whole. And I know that there are companies who, upon hearing, well, CVs aren't being updated, just sort of turned their heads and hoped that NVD and NIST and the whole ecosystem will come back pretty quickly, and it's not happening. So you have pieces of tools that are being bought for decent sums of money that are now introducing additional risk.
I've taken a note. I'm going to reach out to folks at NIST. I'm going to reach out to folks at VulnCheck and a few other companies and see if I can do a special one-off pod here in the next week or two. I love this content. I'm very much worried about it. Like, I don't think this is something we can just sweep under the rug. There's so much value in this data that it has to be kept up somehow, whether it's public involvement, private involvement, a combo platter, community built. I don't know. And we have to dig into this and fix this problem at a broader scale. And I'm so glad you brought it up again for the second month in a row, Katie, because I think this is something we have to definitely work up a solution to that's beneficial for everybody. The data is just too important.
And even if we're getting there, it's been sitting dormant now for 2 months, which means that these vendor products, which ingest this CVE information, they can't be doing the job that they're supposed to do. And it's a vendor's responsibility, I believe, to address it. At very least, I don't know if any of you guys have seen any announcements from these vendors saying, hey, by the way, we're aware of this and we're working on it. I haven't seen a single vendor.
So I did. I saw a couple. But typically the ones I saw, Orca, for example, posted a post that said it doesn't affect us. So usually when I saw it, it's, oh, we don't use that, or it's such a small, minute piece of what we do, it's not important. Those were the commentaries that I had tended to see based on the back of this. Doesn't mean that others haven't done it, but I haven't done an exhaustive search as well. All right. We're going to jump to our next topic, and it's our final. Actually, no, I'm going to do a thought exercise. I'm going to take 5 minutes here and do a quick thought exercise. I saw this posted. I honestly don't remember where I saw it posted, whether it was a cybernews.com article. It was a ridiculous question that they posed. They posed a question to a number of folks, a number of cybersecurity people, and saying, okay, if you had $100 to apply to cybersecurity, where would you put the $100? It's a ridiculous question because $100 doesn't buy you anything. It barely buys you one license of an AV for your endpoints. So I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit and say, I want the three of you to put yourselves in the land of a CISO. One of you is a CISO, so this is a very relevant question. Put yourself in a CISO role, a cybersecurity leader role of a mid to large company, not a 5-person mom and pop shop company, but a mid to large enterprise. And you had one technology you could buy, one and only one purchase to be made. What do you buy with your proverbial $100? I want to start with Adrian. What do you buy with your proverbial $100? You have an appropriate budget, an appropriate size.
The problem I
for your
have with this
budget for an
question is you
enterprise
can
of,
do a lot with $0.
5,000 employees.
How many? I'm not even going to worry about that. It's going to be. There's so much you can do. There's so many security tools built into stuff that IT already owns. That's not cybersecurity specific. There's so much configuration and work you can do there. Is MFA enabled? Do we have reasonable hardening on production systems, on end users' laptops and things like that?
And you can do this all for free.
Yeah, I mean, do we already have a Microsoft E5 license that comes with all kinds of stuff already? Like it's there's so much security stuff already built into things because we got to remember security fills gaps, right? And eventually those gaps do get filled. At one point in time, you had to spend money to put a firewall on a laptop. Like that was a product you had to go out and buy. Firewalls were not built into operating systems. If you wanted a VPN client, if you wanted full disk encryption, you had to go buy those as products. Now they're just part of Windows and part of Mac OS.
All right, I'm gonna shelf the rest of your answer because I do have a follow up for that, Katie.
I hate your question. That's my
okay. Grumpy old man comes forth and says he hates my question. Katie, where do you spend your first and only $100?
I mean, I was going to have a slightly different answer, but I'm converted to the gospel of Adrian, and I actually believe it's true
too.
I actually, because it's people, process, and technology. It's people, process, and technology. So you've got 2/3 on the people and process, and $100 ain't going to get you very far anyway.
Proverbial $100. But it sounds like you're just going to side with Adrian. And for sake of time, I want to go to our real CISO, Rick. Where do you put your proverbial first purchase?
Wow, Adrian, we just got sidelined.
When I was at Forrester, I wrote about expense in depth over defense in depth. And I'm not going to lead with technology. I'm going to invest $100 in people, and then I'm going to figure things out. It's going to be people and process.
Okay. So you all agree.
Now, I could tell you the first technology I would invest in, and that would be next generation AI.
Get out of here.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, and the follow-on question, that's a natural follow-on question to this is, if you wouldn't buy anything with your first and only $100, why do we have to spend massive cybersecurity budgets to secure our enterprise? Is this something we should be rethinking fundamentally and saying, why can't we use process, free tools, combo platter of better solutions that are way more affordable and upend this industry in its entirety?
To a degree,
I think we're spending money. Where spending money makes sense is when it saves on that labor. When it's you kind of do this build versus buy. Like I would have said my first $100, I would have maybe put it in deception. But the reason I didn't say that is you can do that for free. That is one of those things that you can do for free.
Okay, deception for free. But so why does random company B of A, Bank of America, have a $30 million a year cyber budget or whatever their massive cyber budget is? Why can't they do what you guys are suggesting? Why are we spending all this money?
The cybersecurity industrial complex.
Actually, it's I mean, why does my youngest kid spend their entire paycheck the moment it's there? Because
it's there.
This is saying something about cybersecurity as an industry.
I think if we're taking off the grumpy old man hats today, there's only one person wearing a hat today. But if we're taking off
the grumpy old man.
All right, continue.
It's just the balding old man.
It's a glass half full guy wearing the hat.
I think there's I agree with Adrian and Rick that people and process should come first. They should. But there's a lot you could absolutely do with just IT products, but there is also a baseline of technologies that really do make it better, easier, faster, more accurate in cybersecurity. So I do think there are tools that absolutely help. Do I think there's overspending on tools and over-reliance on tools versus the process and the people? I think for most organizations, that's the case. But yes, do companies need to spend as much as they spend? Probably not. They probably should be investing more in the people in the process. But having those, baseline of tools, but that doesn't mean you have to go and buy all the amazing, awesome, next-gen, groundbreaking, cutting-edge, bleeding tools that you're going to find on the RSA show floor in a week and a half.
That is a wonderful view of the tooling, right? Just thinking of the RSA show floor, that there's so much expense that can occur in that spot. Adrian, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I think the money can really cause as many problems, create as many problems as it can solve. So I think if you start spending without a plan, so maybe that money should go to advisory services. Like that's a lot of what I do over at that we do over at IANS is like half the questions you get is how should I spend my budget? Like, it's more specific than that. It's like, oh, I'm looking to buy something in this area, and almost every time I have one of those conversations, they're missing something major in how they're thinking about the problem, and they're going straight to, I got some budget and I want to spend it. And you kind of walk them through the why, like, okay, why do you want to spend this budget on this thing? Well, because I saw this ad, or whatever. The demo was really cool.
I think this is an excellent thought exercise that every cyber security leader or even individual contributor should go through. Like, what if we had extremely low resources? How would we tackle this problem? Mm-hmm. And let's see if we can figure out how to create as high of a quality or significantly close to as high of a quality of cybersecurity environment without having to blow through all this capital to do so. So we're going to set that one aside. Thank you guys for indulging me on that. I do have one other story before we get to our story number 5 for this week, but I think I'm going to shelve it and we're going to tease it for next month. So the next story we were supposed to talk about was human input to AI physical methods. Technologies like the Humane or Human AI Pin, the Rabbit R1, the Whisper Ring, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses. These are all great technologies. I think we got a 20 to 30 minute discussion around data input. Oh, are they? We're getting the are they head nod from Adrian. I think they're interesting to discuss these input technologies, but we've got a few of them on order by some of our team members. So we're going to wait till these things come in. And so hopefully we'll be able to tackle that topic next month. And so I want to wrap up this month's pod with our story number 5. So this month for our final story, our story number 5, our fun story, is the Dnsys X1 Dnsys. It's DNSYS.
They say Dnsys in all the videos I've heard.
Okay. And if you've seen the videos for the X1 exoskeleton, you'll also understand that whoever does their editing is not nearly as good as our producer, Sean, because their voiceovers are absolutely horrific and don't match the videos at all. But this is a technology of the X1 exoskeleton, which is like a thing you wear on your hips that basically connects to your legs and allows you to hike things you couldn't hike before, to run further. It augments your body, so to speak, right? So this particular one, the story discusses the X1 exoskeleton, which is described as a step towards, which I describe as a step towards people sitting in their chairs like Wall-E and just having something that moves them all around for them. But we're going to take a pause here and we'll actually open up the video so that the team can take a quick peek at the AI-powered exoskeleton.
Oh, excellent. Are we going to be able to hear it, though? The terrible
It's probably
AVR
best that you don't.
Part.
It's probably best that you don't hear it.
There we
go. For them,
muted now.
It's best, but for me, that was the funniest
That's
part.
true. Yeah.
The terrible AVR.
Yes. So we have this open and we're looking at it. You guys, you're not going to be able to see this if you're listening to the pod live. But what do we think of this kind of augmented human running movement, saving up to 50% energy, 50% of your energy? Is this something you guys would ever see getting any kind of mass adoption?
Well, for people that are impaired, or if I think about what Colonel Rhodes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he gets paralyzed and he's got an exoskeleton that he walks around with. Like, you kind of giggle about this one, but I think that's pretty cool application is for, helping people move that are otherwise unable to move.
So it also works in reverse. It can also make it harder for you to move.
Oh, so you could use it as a workout device
for training. Yeah. Resistance training.
So I have a pretty good perspective on this. I spend a lot of my time, I'm a gym rat. And I know a lot of really freaking crazy people. And probably a few years ago, I would have said, this is fucking ridiculous. But I have a friend, and he and his wife have an Australian Kelpie, which, if you don't know the breed, is very high energy, very athletic, great dog. And the husband, my friend, is quite athletic as well, and he likes to take Cookie on runs. He likes to take Cookie on hikes, whole thing. And a lot of the time, he would take his mountain bike into the woods, and he couldn't keep up with the damn dog because the dog was so fast. He ended up spending a boatload of money on an e-bike. I know that's a little different, but the one-to-one comparisons there. He ended up buying an e-bike so that he could keep up with the dog. And it wasn't just faster. He wanted to be able to have the extra horsepower to be able to go longer, faster. And so it benefited them both. And
so you're buying in. You're in.
I am buying in because it depends on your motivation, and everybody's motivation would be different for exercise or fitness or whatever the case may be. But I can see some applications, but I also think Rick's point is really, really good. People with limited mobility, awesome application. I don't think you should buy something like this to be like, oh yeah, I'm exercising, but my effort's cut in half. That's a really bad reason to buy it. But if you're the kind of person who says, I want to be able to scale this mountain, I want to be able to say, I did a 100-mile run, whatever the case may be. Now, it's not the same. You can't have an adaptive athlete that has certain advantages competing against a non-adaptive athlete. That's not it. But let's say I wanted to climb Everest. At this point in my fitness, I couldn't do that. But if I had the advantage, maybe I could still have the experience and be able to say I did it. So there are certainly, I think, pure applications of this, which would be fantastic. And it's a training.
You are such a glass half full person. Y'all described me as a glass half empty person earlier on this pod, and you are 100% right, because I immediately just go to the obese people in Wall-E floating around in their little chairs. And if I think if you release this kind of technology at a price point to the average human being, they would just augment their own day-to-day life and do 50% less effort so that they could walk easier. Like, I just don't see humanity embracing this the right way.
I think 100% of sales come from people who are already fit.
And I don't see anything wrong with that. It's like my friend Phil. He was already fit. He's a great mountain biker, but he needed to be faster for his dog. And now he can go out and mountain bike for much longer with her, where he couldn't before. He was getting tired because she is an insane dog.
So on that Kickstarter page, if you scroll down on that Kickstarter page, they link to some YouTubers who review it. And I think the first one there, the guy who looks like he's in the Scottish Highlands, because I think he is in the Scottish Highlands and he sounds Scottish. He throws out that use case, Katie, where he says he got an e-bike because he's got friends that are much faster on road bikes, and he likes to hang out with them and bike with them, but he just can't keep up. So he got an e-bike for that. And he said he could see using this also with some of his running friends that are just in a different league than him. With this thing, he could keep up with them. And he actually did some testing. He ran, he made himself like a small circuit and ran it with nothing at all, with this thing in full assist mode and with this thing in full resistance mode, and like measured his time each time. And it was a 5-second difference for like a 30-second for the 30-second thing he was running.
It's a training model as well. Even if you just want to get better, for non-adaptive, non-assisted exercise, because there is such thing as muscle memory. Yeah. And it's
cheaper than the humane AI pin. Also, it is cheaper
than. But like when I run an obstacle course workout for the first time, I usually feel like, oh wow, that's hard. If I do it again and again and again, by the third or fourth time, it becomes easier. It's not like I'm getting that much better. There's a muscle memory component, so you can train your body to get better. because of the muscle memory component. I think it's great.
All right, so I got two people loving it. So on a pledge, a $5,000 goal for this Kickstarter, they have $400,000, and Rick is the closest we have to pretty much somebody that's in Wall-E, like horribly out of shape, and somebody that I would say, actually is closest to this. Rick, give us your opinion.
Dang.
I mean, I think that's extremely rude. First of all,
For those that
his first reaction was to talk about people who actually could use some assistance. So he's a good guy. Don't pick on Rick.
Yeah, I think
he's in excellent shape, to be real.
Well, I mean, I'm about to go on hiking in northern England here in about 3 weeks, actually. I could give it to my kids because actually it'd be kind of cool for my kids because they can't keep up with my wife and I. We pretty active hikers, do lots of outdoor stuff. So I think it's exciting. I'm much more interested in the use cases for, people that helps them do things that they couldn't do in their ordinary life.
Yeah,
some of the same kind of stuff that Elon's working on with Neuralink as well. Like I think technology is really going to, enable people to do things that they couldn't do in the past.
Way to wrap us up on a really positive commentary after that slam I had on you, Rick. Yeah. Love you, brother. And like I said, for full transparency, he's former military, probably actually Katie's probably the most fit, but Rick is certainly very fit as well. So I take it back. I'm just joking. That is the end of our show for this week. I would like to thank our new co-hosts, Big Head Adrian, Big Head Rick, and Big Head Katie for making an appearance. These guys are getting on an airplane and they will be shipped to each of your homes so that you have them available for future pods. I'd also like to thank our weekly lead sponsor this week, Material Security. Shout out to the folks in Material. You guys kick ass. We appreciate you getting behind this show. Thank you to our super production team, Dead Inside Media, and super producer Sean. If you are watching this pod and you're looking for a kick-ass, amazing super producer, Sean runs his own company called Dead Inside Media. I highly recommend it. Get in touch with me or anybody on the show. We can get you in touch with Sean. And so thank you again to all our new co-hosts, and thank you folks for coming. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button. Check us out on thecyberwhy.com. If you're looking for the latest episode drops, please subscribe. We love you guys. We love having you on the show, and we really enjoy spending each couple hour session a month with you guys. So thank you again, and have a wonderful month.